Sales and marketing don't have to be complicated. In this episode, my next guest breaks down 8 marketing tips they used to grow their business to 8 figures. Please welcome Alex Ladd. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Great to have you on. So before we dive in, could you tell us something unique about yourself that most people don't know?
That's a tough one, I guess, but I'll go with, I think more and more people know this, but that I was born in Brazil.
Oh, all right.
My parents were living there. I mean, both of them are from the US, so I feel guilty kind of calling myself Brazilian because both of my parents were from the US living there at the time. So, I don't feel like I have a legitimate claim to calling myself Brazilian, but I was born there.
Still, I mentioned Ricardo offline. He's our editor. He is from Brazil. What city?
Rio.
Right on. Small world. All right. Let's go ahead and dive into the episode. So why don't you take a few minutes here and tell us about your career background?
Okay. My career background's a little different, I think, than most people. I actually graduated from college with a history degree. And now I'm running a company that's very technical in nature, and I've spent a lot of time doing very technical things. So little twist of where I started to where I ended up there. But, I started working with a small company back in 1997 that was really founded to start promoting and kind of evangelizing the principles of business intelligence and what's called OLAP, or cube related reporting and analysis. And since then, and I've been doing that since then, and I worked for a number of different small boutique consulting firms that did that. And then what led me to found Mindstream was eventually one of the small boutique firms I was working for was acquired. This was right before the big crisis in 2008. I think we were sold about a week before Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. So it was probably like up until the 11:59 Cinderella. But it was very, very close to the final bell there. But then we were acquired, and, the acquisition, it wasn't a great cultural fit, I think. It's hard to piece out exactly all the problems, when you go through a major financial crisis. It's that you're going to have difficulty already, right? But about a year later, I was talking to one of the guys who was one of my mentors, and telling him that I think I was going to look for a new job, et cetera, et cetera. And he told me, well, you have a pretty good reputation. Why don't you try your own thing? And then if it doesn't work out, I'm sure somebody else will give you a job. So I guess I always tell people, I guess I'm still looking for that next job. But so that's a little bit about it. And, what we've done is Mindstream is really around corporate performance management. That's our specialty.
Love the backstory there. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your company, Corporate Performance Management? We'll dive in, and then I really want to break down, how did you buid this company? This will be fun.
Sure.
So yeah.
So when you think about corporate performance management, I don't know if, some of your listeners may or may not have heard of a company called Hyperion. They were really kind of the king of this back until they were acquired by Oracle in about, 2007? I think they were acquired by Oracle. And so that's, a lot of times when I mention that name, people will say, oh yeah, now I know what it is. But really what it is helping the office of the CFO, and it's financial systems that help the office of the CFO. A lot of them are very highly analytical in nature. I talked about the cube. So it's really around slicing and dicing data to try and, tease out nuggets of what's really going on in the business. We do a lot of planning, budgeting, planning, forecasting, and analysis for the FP&A teams under a CFO. And then we work with the consolidations team when we start looking at you think of your general ledger and you're recording all these things, but when you roll all that up, what does that look like? And that's what the consolidation side is working on.
Nice. All right. So let's get into the business. We've got a lot of entrepreneurs that are listening. They're either looking to start their next business or trying to grow their current business. So you got a business here. I assume is this a SaaS model?
No, it's really a consulting firm. It's really, the one thing that is interesting from that perspective right now is, one of the things that everybody talks about COVID and people going virtual and things like that. And we've been virtual since we started. So this wasn't as big a swing for us, but some of the elements of that are interesting as how that grew and how that evolved, and kind of what we do about, keeping the team together as part of being 100% virtual.
Got it. And how big is your team?
We're about 70
people. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this was founded, again, this was around 2007, 2008?
We were founded in 2009.
9. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Just coming out of the recession. All right. You got the momentum.
Exactly. Exactly. Just coming out.
Right
So,
on. So it's consulting service focused on helping the CFO and everybody
mhm,
that reports under.
mhm.
Let's break down the service offering a little bit. Do you structure it? And this is an important question because I do talk to people who are, they have a service business, but they're trying to create reoccurring customers.
Yeah.
With you, I assume you have that model set up so you're charging some kind of monthly fee, which means you're providing a monthly service to
Mhm.
justify that, right?
Yeah. So when you think about it, we break our well, you can break our business down in a lot of different ways, but in terms of your question right now, you break it down in two ways. One is we have kind of a traditional consulting approach, which is project based, et cetera. And
Yeah.
then when we put in these systems, a lot of companies don't necessarily have or want to employ a specialist for these systems. So in that case, we also have a managed services division. So we will do the administration, we'll do all, take care of it, make sure it's up to date and running properly, et cetera, and that becomes more of a recurring revenue stream.
Right.
Mhm.
Is I assume your model, correct me if I'm wrong here, if you're partnering up with I think of like bookkeeping services. Do you kind of partner with
Yeah,
those types of companies and they
yeah,
kind of help you give you leads?
yes. Bookkeeping services to a degree. The other folks that we really partner with are like CPA firms or
Yeah.
financial consulting firms, things like that, like a PwC, or then on the smaller side, accounting firms and implementation firms like an Eide Bailey out here in the West. They're that kind of that smaller SMB
Hmm.
focused business. So it varies, but yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about this offline as marketing and sales is always the most common
Mm,
question I get. How do you market? How do you sell? And a great way to do that is to create the pull through sale process, as it's phrased, and that way
yeah.
you kind of sync up with people that are serving your customer, and how can you kind of network with them because they can kind of provide leads on autopilot. So let's get right into sales and marketing. What
Mhm.
maybe touch on what have you tried in the past that did not work, and then we can focus on what is working.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I'm trying to figure out what's working every day. But we've been around since 2009, so we've tried a lot. I like to think, but I'm sure there's always more to try. When I think about one of the big things that I attend a lot of, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I attend a lot of webinars and things like that to, listen to people talk about marketing and sales and their different strategies and things like that. So I'm always kind of thinking about what we can do next. But some of the things that we've tried over the years, and one of the things that I kind of come back to, because this was kind of a division in that we had internally for a while and kind of fought it out really, was when you think about marketing sales, is your goal to reach as many people, or are you looking for the real valuable ones, right? So you think about building your email list and things like that. And like we would have a massive list at times over the last 15 years, would look at a lot of different things. But those lists don't like the bigger is not always better. I've come to believe that
Mhm.
over time. When we started, we're just anybody, just get them to sign up and give them our email address, right? And then, we had this massive like 10,000 person list for a small company. That's a big
Mhm.
list. But what's your return on that list? Nothing really, but when you whittle it down and get the people that are actually, targeting and you're talking to the people that way, um, I feel like you get a lot more bang for your buck. Well, number one, it's easier, and this is something we kind of go through constantly about like cleaning the contact list and things like that, and I'm always a proponent. I think from now on, and I didn't used to be, but I am now a bigger proponent of keeping the list small, because you get these giant unwieldy lists, and most of the people on there either aren't paying attention and they're just too lazy, or they have another process, so they're not really unsubscribing. They're just deleting it, right? So your
Yeah.
click through rate is so low, your open rate's low, and then your click through rate is even lower, right? So if you look at that, I always think you want to push the list down. And that seems to fit with most of the people that I hear these days when traveling around listening to different webinars and talks about that. So, we spent a lot of time doing SEO, and I think our SEO is actually pretty good for our market. And we rank pretty high. We're on the first page of the stuff that's important to us, as far as the search terms and things like that. But where that takes us and what you're getting out of that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? Because the next piece is, all right, well, now you've got that first page, but then when people click on it, what's the result coming through, right? And it really is, you got to mine and look at each piece and make sure each piece is working. And that's been the kind of thing that we've tried all kinds of things, so you hit our page after you've
Mhm.
Googled us or something like that. And what's the call to action? What's is there a giveaway? Is there some kind of offer you're making, et cetera? Those things. So we've tried a lot of different things like that. I think things like, for our segment, things like ebooks have done pretty well.
Okay.
But it's also I think, this sounds so silly, but, and I don't have any data to back this one up, but I always think that I really think that, like, the look and presentation of the page makes a huge difference,
Okay.
which I think people tend to gloss over, but I really do think it makes a big difference. And when you think about it, you're presenting yourself. This is the first time you're presenting yourself to someone, right? So it does have a big impact.
Put a little work into your website design.
Yeah.
I tend to overlook it a little bit as well because I find too many entrepreneurs spend way too much time on polishing a website, right?
Yeah, I think that's totally true. But I also think, and because at the end of the day, even for us, I mean, our site visits are pretty high. I mean, it's thousands, and we're
Hmm.
not that big a company, and the click through rate's small, et cetera. But at the end of the day, even with all of that, depends. I think it depends on what you're selling, right? If you're selling
Right.
a software product or a product or something like that, it's going to depend. I'm sure these numbers are different for different industries, but for us, what we end up getting through that is very minimal. I tend to think of the website now as more a sales support mechanism than a sales initiation mechanism. You
Right.
know what I mean? So, like, you're not getting your initial lead from your website. We're getting more, we reach out to them maybe and get in, like, talk to them, and then they're hitting the website to kind of verify anything from that conversation, right? So if they like the conversation, then they're coming back to the website and they're passing the website around for people at their, at the same
Sure.
company, so they can all look at all our content, et cetera, and stuff like that. So in that case, I think it's more of like a second step in the pipe
Right
versus
on.
kind of that initial kind of dragnet.
I want to circle back and talk a little bit more about email and SEO because that seems to be working a little bit. Now, with email, you mentioned how important it is to build a quality list. And this is a good takeaway for the audience is you probably get pitched, I get pitched all the time, people
Yeah.
selling email lists.
Yep.
And to me, that's a hard no because you haven't built a relationship or provided value to anybody there. So you could be literally buying air. It doesn't like there's nothing of
Yeah.
value there, right? So
I agree. I agree. We've
now
never,
you're
what we've tried, we have done it. But we've done it very small
Mhm.
increments, and we've tried just to try it a couple times, but we've never gone further because it's never amounted to anything.
Right. Now with that, you tend to focus on quality people hitting your email list. Is this going back? Let's go back to the funnel. You mentioned an ebook. Do you give away an ebook or something on your site to, generate a lead?
It depends. It depends on, like, the search term. And I won't say that there's an ebook attached to every page or whatnot, but
Sure.
yes, we do at certain points. But then the other thing, that we've actually gotten a lot of traction on is kind of like playbacks from webinars and
Hmm.
things like that. You know what I mean? So, instead of an ebook, I think and maybe I'm wrong, but where we're kind of seeing some better, traction is building up that library of webinars. Because there's a lot of
Okay.
things when you think about what we do, there's a lot of technical questions. There's a lot of questions about, non-technical and process stuff for the business, et cetera. All of these types of things, that, people will want to listen to or hear about, and some of them are very particular type subjects. So a webinar on that subject, or a webinar on something else. When that happens, you give one. And I try to get all our consultants to do this. And this is another kind of battle with marketing, like that I would
Mhm.
advise people on is like, try, if you're going to go out and create all that content by yourself, that's too much, right?
Mhm.
What we do is we spend a lot of time trying to get all of the consultants to help contribute to that content development. And I think that works a lot better. And I think that works a lot better for a lot of reasons. Number one is when if you're going to use that library to help enable your sales team, if you have the same person talking on every single webinar, people are going to question your depth and things like that, right? But when you have lots of different people contributing, then you look like the team looks like it has depth and breadth and things like that, right? It's just a
Right.
natural kind of byproduct.
Yeah.
So I think all of those things are great. And so I would highly recommend people not just, bring in as much help as you can to create that content. If people are
Right.
asking that kind of question, but then I do think the webinar content, it becomes, and I think that helps with that kind of, because, when you think about consulting, we're really selling it's about
Mhm.
relationship and things like that. So having that kind of complementary sales content can really help. Right.
Do you then kind of market like you'll have a recorded webinar and then send that recording off to maybe prospects that are in your email database? Kind of show them,
Yeah.
hey, this is a conversation, this is our team, this is kind of the experience you would get working with us.
Yeah, I think usually the process that our business development team is going with right now is, they may try and get that initial conversation or that initial email back and forth with someone, try and find out some kind of pain point or something that they have that they can go to
Sure,
that library and check, and then send them something from the library.
sure,
So yes, they are doing that, but it's kind of like, again, it's like that step 1A piece. It's after some kind of communication has been established.
sure, right on. It's
Not that
kind
we
of,
won't send out the blind ones, we
yeah,
will, but I just feel like you get a little more traction if the connection's already there, then you can keep going and it strengthens it.
give them some more video content and
Yeah.
that way they get to kind of without meeting you they kind of get an idea because you're a service business.
Mhm,
Who are we
mhm,
working with? Who are the people
mhm.
behind the scenes? What are they doing? How do they
Exactly.
answer the questions that we would ask?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. Let's get into SEO a little bit. SEO, I always tell people
Mhm.
set expectations. This is not a get rich quick scheme, and it's not an overnight thing,
No,
right?
not at
So,
all.
what? Yeah, like for us, give you context because we're more of a global B2C play. It took us two
Right.
years to
Mhm,
start getting an ROI, but it's like, yeah,
mhm.
it's not 2 weeks, it's not 2 months. It took us two
No.
years.
Yeah, no, it takes a long time. And, I mean, it takes a long time. And the other thing is, as you go through the market, as the market kind of changes and you start to put out different
Hmm.
content here and there, some of your older content starts to come in, and starts to hit the ground and get
Hmm.
runway. And you're like, well, now we're over here. Right. So it is kind of a weird, um, it's kind of a weird thing. And you know what I actually think is, what I do to kind of see where we are is, when you think about like Chat GPT and things like that, I love to go out and ask Chat GPT questions because like this and about us. Like, so get on, ask questions about us, and it'll come back. And it's a great way to see how you're positioned on the web.
Oh, that's
You know what I
that's
mean? Like
clever.
because when you think about it, that's what it's looking at, right? It's looking at all the content that you're putting on the web. So if you're going out and asking questions about Mindstream, it'll tell me what it sees about Mindstream. And what it sees is basically, when you think about it, what it's seeing is what all your potential customers are seeing, right? So what's
Yes.
it gives you kind of like, this is how you're positioned on the web, which
Mhm.
I know that you started with SEO. Sorry, I didn't mean to move
No, this
off of
is
that, but
related. Yeah.
I think it's related because, as you get your SEO and you're seeing things like that, some of these pages are going to get hit more and stuff like that. And then but you'll see from like something like a Chat GPT or whatever. Yes, I mean, don't get me wrong. You can go out and get all your facts and figures about your data about who's hitting and from where and all
Mhm.
that, and that's useful too. Don't get me wrong. But like a quick cheat code for that is to go ask Chat
That's
GPT questions about yourself, right? Because it's going to give you what the public persona is of your company.
yeah. I was just gonna say it's gonna give you the content that's on the surface and most
Hmm.
consistent in
Hmm.
most locations. What is it saying? And might not only be your site, but other sites talking about you other places. It's like,
Yep.
okay, so
Yeah.
that's what people are thinking about
Mm-hmm.
in our business. Can
Yeah.
you get a little tactical with us with SEO? What are you focusing on article writing? Maybe it's, for example, would be like, here are frequent questions our customers ask. We're just going to take those questions, turn them into answers, and write a post about each. Is it something like that, or what kind of
We
content are
do a
you?
little do a little bit of both of that. I mean, like, so we'll have a blog. We do have a blog, and so people will make blog
Mhm.
entries. We'll do that. We also have we'll do short video snippets. So some of those questions like that. The other thing we'll do is like white papers and things like that. So there
Yeah.
are things like that, but the other thing that we do is like a lot of landing pages. So our website is, we have the main site, which if you
Mhm.
dial up mindstreamanalytics.com, excuse me, that's the main site and it'll show you different things. But then there's a lot of like feeder pages that are out there that are really around what we see as SEO questions from, terms, et cetera, that we'll see from customers. And when you think about what we do, it's kind of it's pretty niche. And so because of
Mhm.
that, people have a lot of questions about what is this, what is that? And so it's it's a little easier for us to SEO those specific questions, as we go through. So for us, I think that makes our SEO a little bit easier because it's easier to identify and focus in on the terms we want to really hammer home. But versus something that's more general. If you have a general product or whatever, I'm
Sure.
sure that becomes much more difficult. But we have. I would like to say that I think we have a great developer who helps us with SEO, so, a lot, and we've dialed in some of those terms. But some of those terms, like I said, are a little older, but they still get lots and lots of hits. So, as the time, that's the other thing about SEO. I think that you were mentioning like 2 years to get out. I think,
Mhm.
some of these things take a long time to run up the rankings, right? You'll put them out and you'll get something. All right, great. I'm 52nd or something like that out of 55, right? And then over time, you just start to climb that ranking, right? And part of that is, tweaking it and getting it right, but also, part of that's just time and the length of time that you've been
Yeah.
out there, right? So it's not a get rich thing. It's what you're building today is pipeline, 2-3 years down the road, right?
Yes. Yes. That's the expectation. Let's take a quick commercial break. So if somebody tells you to buy a stock, the last thing you should do is buy that stock. The first thing you should do is ask why. And fortunately, a lot of influencers on YouTube, TikTok, Reddit, and other social media platforms are giving really bad stock recommendations and investment advice. The question is, how do you know the difference between good advice and bad advice? That's where Ticker can help. Ticker cuts through the clutter to help you understand truly what is a good stock and what is a bad stock. This way you can invest confidently on your own. All right. Simply look for those stocks that are on sale, as you can see here with my watch list, and try to avoid those stocks that are overpriced. Of course, don't take my word for it. Go to Trustpilot and see what our customers have to say, and as of today, we have a 4.9 out of 5. And if you're interested, you can join Ticker for free. All right, back to the show. Since you're decision maker, your buyer, I assume, in the organizations you serve is probably director level, VP level, even the CFO in some cases. In many cases, I assume it's probably a director or a VP, probably
Yep. Yep. Depends on the size of the customer.
bringing
Yep.
the case to
Yep.
the CFO, right?
Yep. Yep.
What are some of the? Can you get specific on what are the search phrases that your prospects are probably searching for?
Well, so when you think about it, where we really boil down to is we're helping them implement some of these systems, right? So a lot of them are around the vendors that we utilize and service, right? So, for instance, I mentioned Hyperion earlier in the show. Like that one is, if you look up
Mhm.
what is Hyperion, that's gonna. I don't know if we hit that one. I haven't checked that one in a long time, but
Sure.
really like another competitor of theirs, which kind of came out of Hyperion, a bunch of ex Hyperion people, is a company called OneStream. And
Okay.
so what is OneStream? And that's a great one, right? And we rank pretty high on that.
Nice.
And so things like that. And then what is what is corporate performance management? What is, enterprise performance management, which is what Oracle uses as the term for the same thing. So, there's things like that. Then there's things around like consolidations or budgeting and forecasting and analytics. One of the tool sets that Hyperion used to have is Essbase. So if you Google what is Essbase, I think we're still number one. We might not be in one anymore, but we're in that top 5 area of that, right? So that was a heavy piece for us. So things like that are specific to that. And then we get into things that become more particular about what we're doing. If there's a certain one stream functionality, or if there's, a component of how do I solve this particular piece or something like that, we'll get into those particular technical questions.
Right on. I'd like to get into the numbers a little bit. This will give our listeners a good framework if they're building a consulting firm or some kind of B2B play. What do they charge? And I know it can vary per industry, but can you give us an idea? What do you typically charge for a project, low end to high end?
So, I mean, we're a little unique, I think, amongst our competitors, because we service the SMB side of the marketplace and then all the way up to the enterprise side. Okay. So, the biggest project that we've ever done, I think, was, 10.5 million.
Okay.
The small, but, on the average SMB, right now, our average SMB SOW is around 24,000.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's a really wide spectrum, but that's because we have kind of two lines of business, one that's really focused on serving the SMB and one that's really much more focused on the enterprise side.
Got it. And if you were to apply a percentage to both, what is that split? Does the 80-20 rule apply, or is it 50-50?
Yeah. It's right now it's about 20% on the SMB and 80% on the enterprise.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because it roughly, but that's because the enterprise side has been growing. 3 years ago, it was more like 2/3, 1/3. Right. And so, and then over the last 3 years, the SMB side has kind of held steady, if you will, whereas the enterprise side has grown significantly.
Right. And then with using that nice round number there, 24,000, is that kind of like a yearly contract or agreement?
No, that's usually about 6 to 8 weeks for us to come in and set something up for you. And then, I mentioned the managed services piece. So if the managed services piece is, if you don't have someone that can run the system afterwards, we offer a couple options around that. And some are like more inclusive than others, but the base level is something, I think it's $199 a month, and then there's billable time on top of that, but it's at a much reduced rate than our project billable time.
Gotcha. So, okay. Yeah, that's really good to know. And then regarding the business itself, you got 70 employees, so you are really a healthy machine at this point. But can you give us an idea how many years in were you able to break $1 million ARR?
$1 million ARR is the managed services. So we probably broke $1 million in ARR for managed services about 3 to 4 years in. And part of that is because we had a couple. The problem with our ARR revenue growth really is that I struggle with all the time. You talk about sales and marketing and figure this out, and I'm trying all the time, but with us as a consulting firm and then the managed services firm, it's really hard for us to break to take the managed services kind of out of the shadow of the consulting team, right? They get a lot of work from customers who we did the implementation for, and then we'll buy our managed services or sign up for our managed services, right?
Whereas like a cross sell.
So it's that, right? But like to get it out and get it on its own, where it's bringing in customers just that have not used us for consulting, is much. That's the part that's really that we struggle with. I mean, it happens, but that's the part that we're always constantly looking to try and figure out, right? How can we drive that on its own? And part of that is we're a small company, so you have limited. It's not like you can just, all right, all the marketing dollars go to managed services. That's going to hurt you, right? Because your biggest cost is your staff on the consulting side, right? So you can't just do that, right? So part of it is how do you divide up resources and things like that?
Right.
I think the other side of that also goes to the entrenchment of certain customers with their consulting partner and things like that. Like they're going to try and do everything not to get them to come to us, right? So like you're fighting an uphill battle right from the get-go.
Yeah.
So that one is a tough thing. So, but I think we got to a million ARR. I want to say probably like 3 to 4 years. But part of that was also because, you mentioned at the beginning going back to like partnering and getting leads from people without your own marketing efforts. In our space, we are huge on partnering.
Yeah.
We're known in the industry, I think, as people you can partner with, and I think that's really important. So that's one of the reasons we got got to a million in ARR with the managed services piece was really from referrals from consulting firms that didn't have it, that didn't have
Got
that
it.
offering, but knew us and knew that they could trust us to work with us and things like that.
Right on.
And that was something that we were able to leverage, and that's what helped us get there.
And then getting to the million mark on the consulting side, how long did that take?
We did that in the first year.
Hey, nice work.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so that was, I mean, part of that was also, I think I told you the story about how it started, and I had a lot of connections. I had a lot of people that were looking for work at the time, and so we were able to kind of take that on,
Solve
right?
that
So,
problem. Yeah.
but that again, that I would not say that was because I mastered sales and marketing. I think that was because I had the connections at the time that were all looking for, projects and things like
Yep.
that. People
Yeah.
people knew me already and things like that. So.
That's great. And then can you tell us what are your overall revenues today?
Let's see, last year it was about 13 million, just a
13
little
million?
over.
Yep.
And this year we're shooting for just over 15.
That's great. With 70 employees, that's awesome. Nice work. Creating a well-optimized service business is not easy, but
Mhm.
sounds like you certainly arrived there for sure. Operations has got to be a
We're always
key.
trying. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. What I'd like to do next is kind of like a roll up of the key takeaways. And then I'm going to ask you what is one key takeaway you can give our audience before we jump into the rapid fire round. So, and this is kind of the moment where I like to break the fourth wall and really give the hot takeaways for our audience. So, I saw this episode as there's a lot of great takeaways to build a B2B business. It could be a software business, but it could be a consulting business,
Mhm.
like what Alex has talked about. So here we go. I got 8 hot points I want to highlight that work for marketing. Here we go. So email marketing is big, but collect the right leads. Don't go for volume, go for quality.
Mhm.
Number 2, offer some kind of ebook or something to generate the lead. That's important. Number 3, I've got SEO. Make sure your SEO is in place. I really like the idea, and I've heard this on other episodes. Is you could have articles written about a competitor, because if they Google that competitor, you may pop up.
Yeah.
Sounds like some of that is happening for you now, which is
Mhm.
wonderful. Number 4 is creating specific landing pages. You've got your main homepage of your website, but you want to have some specific landing pages related to the SEO I just mentioned.
Mhm.
Um, this is a good one. Love webinars. I tell people you should be putting out free webinars,
Yeah.
record them, repurpose the content, share them with others, because people are kind of on the fence, maybe like, all right, I want to jump on a call and just learn a little more.
Yeah.
Number 6, website design. Don't overlook that. Again, I'm one that I kind of say just get a site up and move on. But in your case, you might have some particular people, they really want to look at a polished site. So focus there. 7, this was good. I'm not doing this and I need to do this. Ask ChatGPT about your company. What does ChatGPT have to say about Mindstream Analytics, or in my case, Ticker?
Yeah. Yeah.
Something there. And then number 8, this is the home run. I tell anybody is you need to build partnerships. And enterprise world, they call them channel partners, or sometimes
Yeah.
distributors, or in our case, we call them affiliates. That's
Mhm.
a great place to be. So there are hot 8 marketing tips to grow a B2B business. Now, before we jump into the rapid fire round, what is one more key takeaway you can give our audience?
One more key, I
Yeah.
guess one more key takeaway, I guess, would be something along the lines of, and I think that this goes into GPT, that
Mhm.
item that we talked about, and that is be constantly testing new ideas and be constantly ready to pivot to something else, right? Some of this stuff, like we said, does take time to develop, but you also have to be constantly working on new ideas and validation of those things, right? So look at that and look at the data.
Yes. And then one of those deals, and I can emphasize this, is as a business owner, you get so ingrained in the daily activities of like marketing, sales, operations, if you're building software, and you got to kind of stop and take a 50,000 foot view and look at the data in your business. And I have to remind myself of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Slow down for a minute, Sean, and look at the data. Where are we going? And in most cases, I'd say 80% of the time I see an aha moment, like, no, we should not be doing that. We should be doing this. So I love that takeaway. Good tip. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's dive into the rapid fire round. This is the part of the episode where we get to find out who Alex really is. If you can, try to answer each question in about 15 seconds or less. You ready?
Okay, go ahead.
All right. What is your favorite podcast?
Well, don't I have to say Payback Time?
I always tell, please don't say Payback. What are you actually listening to?
No, actually, you know what? I actually forget the name of it, but it's about pilots. I recently started getting a pilot's license. And so
nice.
I listen to a lot of that. So
one of my
I can't
best
remember
friends,
the name, to be honest with you. I put it in my saved and it's just there. So sorry.
M0A, is it related to that?
No, this is
okay.
I forget what it's easy. It's like autopilot or something like that. And it's two ex-military pilots that talk about a lot of different things. So
got it. That's a really tight knit community. One of my best friends is, he's got a small aircraft and he's been a pilot and it's cool. He fills me in on what's going on in the industry. It seems like this person knows that person. They don't even live close to each other, and people know each other. It's a cool community.
Yeah.
All right.
It's been so far.
What is a recent book you read and would recommend?
Ooh, a recent book. You know what? Most of the books I've been reading have been about, Pilot's Handbook and things like that. But you know what? I'm a sucker for like spy novels and things like that. So if you really want to know I've read a series by Brad Taylor. And I forget the latest one he's written, but that was probably the last kind of for pleasure book I read, which I'm sorry is not business related at all.
No. This is good because that's kind of my style. This leads into I'm getting an idea who you are here. Leads into this third question is, what is your favorite movie?
Oh, like I said, this is such a hard topic. You know what? I was actually debating this. Where does this isn't really the right answer or not an answer, but I was just having a debate with some friends over the weekend about where does Raiders of the Lost Ark fit in a top 10 list or something like that. And, is that the favorite of all time? Maybe, but it definitely is up there. And I don't see it on a lot of top 10 lists if you look around and read top 10 lists or whatever, but it's got to be somewhere up there. It's really, it's a great movie. So I don't know if that's my favorite, but it's definitely worthy of mention.
It's in the conversation. It's like that. That was my entry as a kid from cartoons and this stuff we watched to like real action movies. My dad was like, don't watch that anymore. Watch this. And I was like, I'm done with cartoons. Thank you, Harrison Ford and Steven Spielberg. Appreciate it. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I was thinking you would have said something in line with like the show Reacher, I imagine.
Oh, you know what? I do watch Reacher. That's not a movie. Do you count that though as a series?
Right. Some people come on and say a series, and I'm like, that's valid. That's valid.
I've definitely caught up on Reacher. Waiting for the next season already.
Exactly. Knowing your military interest, I'm like, that's one you probably would love.
Yeah. That's
all right. Few business questions here or related, which would be, what is the worst advice you ever received?
The worst advice I ever received. You know what? I'm going to say it has to do with hiring. I'm not going to say who it was, but it had to do with hiring, and it had to do with hiring when I started the company. And I think that set trends that probably I wish that we hadn't set.
Yeah. I made plenty mistakes in that area too.
Yeah.
All right. Flip the equation. What's the best advice you ever received?
Unfortunately, they both come from the same person, which is, I guess, I don't know, average out net zero or positive, I guess, in the long run. But I think the best piece of advice I ever got was to start my own company.
Nice.
So,
all right. And now the time machine question. If you could go back in time to give your younger self advice, what age would you visit and what would you say?
this is not business related, but I would go back to when I was 5. I mentioned that I was born in Brazil, and when we moved to the United States, I spoke Portuguese before I spoke English. When we moved to the United States, I was really homesick about leaving Brazil, and I refused to speak Portuguese to anyone, and then lost my ability to speak Portuguese. And I would go back and tell myself to keep speaking Portuguese, because that's one of my biggest regrets, is having lost that.
Right on. Yeah. Awesome advice. All right. And where can the audience reach you?
Audience can reach me at, www.mindstreamanalytics.com. And it's a very long domain name. I'm sorry, but it's there. And then I'm on LinkedIn, Alexander Ladd on LinkedIn, and Mindstream Analytics. And you definitely can find me there.
Awesome. We'll have all your links listed down below, both in the podcast and our site. But Alex, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Sean.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Okay, thanks.